Well, he has arrived, the false shepherd, the man from the Vatican. He flew in this morning, 12 minutes past 10, 15 minutes ahead of schedule, and who met him at the airport but Prince Philip. Completely unprecedented. I cannot recall any previous state visit where a member of the royal family, a senior member of the royal family, has gone to meet a travelling dignitary. Very, very strange. Anyway, I made a few notes which I'm going to give you throughout this video, and I'm going to ask you to read an article that I wrote some years ago. I was going to read it, but it's rather windy, rather blowy today. Maybe that's a picture of God's judgment on this nation. One thing I've noticed a lot over the last week or two is the amount of press coverage this trip is getting. The BBC have got more reporters reporting this event than they did during the World Cup. Can you believe that? This morning the BBC ran non-stop news coverage. Can you believe it? Again, we had George Bush here in 2004. We've had other famous people visit here, and I cannot recall for the life of me the amount of press coverage this guy is getting. There was an anchor from one of the major channels in this country who was interviewed last night. She's in Rome, and she flew with the Pope this morning into the UK, and she went rather weak at the knees at the thought of covering such a large event. Britain is a secular country. We never used to be, but we are today. We are a multicultural nation, and like I said, the BBC are very much going wall to wall, non-stop coverage, and they are loaded with left-wing atheists, so on and so forth. So it's a very strange time that we are living in. But the press are covering it, as you would imagine, but they are rather gooey, a bit like an expected mother. This guy has no charisma as such, and yet the pictures that I've been watching, there have been children, very sadly, lining the street with their Vatican flags, awaiting his arrival, and I believe he even did a walkabout. Very unusual for Pope to do so. Okay, one thing I want to just add a footnote to. In the last video I gave you some problems that the UK occurred when they've had previous papal visits and audiences, so on and so forth. It was Gordon Brown in, I think it was 2008, that officially invited Joseph Ratzinger to the UK. That same year the recession hit. He lost his job early this year, and we are still in a recession. We were the first ones in, and we were the last ones out. Now, you'll get the press saying, well, we have come out, but I beg to differ. Most people in the UK are doing part-time jobs, not full-time jobs. So when the government say there are 29.5 million people in employment, most of those people are in part-time work. Britain is still on her knees, and we could still see a double-dip recession. In 1951, the Queen went to Rome to visit the Pope, which would have been Eugene Pacelli. He didn't go to London, she went to him. And since 1951, she has met nearly every single Pope, apart from John Paul I. What do you make of that? She's the head of the Church of England, she's supposed to be separate from the Vatican, and yet she goes to meet the Pope of Rome. Very, very bizarre indeed. His plane has been dubbed Shepherd 1, Air Force One, Shepherd 1, and as he boarded the plane this morning from Rome, his stewardess, or stewardesses, what do you want to call them, the stewards on the plane, almost bowed down to him. And popes are very good at that. They will take as much reverence from ignorant people as they can get. If you know anything about history, this is one thing which you need to know. The popes of Rome replaced the Roman emperors, and the cardinals replaced the Senate. Okay, so what you're seeing here is a rehash of the old pagan Roman Empire. But of course today's Pope doesn't have as much clout as say Julius Caesar, Tiberius or Nero had. But nonetheless he has a lot of diplomatic clout, I would just like to add. What you're going to see over the next several days are get this, 5 British Prime Ministers. Mrs. Thatcher right up to David Cameron. They're going to wait in the queues to go in and see him. And if you go into any of his masses in this country, it's going to cost you £25, which is about $40. Pretty windy weather, isn't it? The Bible talks about wind, talks about rain as a picture of God's judgment. The sad reality is that more people are excited about seeing Ratzinger than they are about meeting God and reading the scriptures. Something else which I was quite interested in seeing, Rowan Williams and the Deputy Prime Minister were at Holyrood House awaiting the Pope's arrival. Can you believe that? Of course you can. Clegg is an atheist and Williams is an apostate, but once again they are going to see him, he's not going to see them. Now I hope you can see the point that I'm trying to get across here. It's submitting yourselves to the Pope of Rome, and you can see why our Reformed brethren believe the Pope is the Antichrist, the man of sin. And did you know that today was the Day of Atonement? Interesting day that the Pope would choose to fly into the United Kingdom. The Catholic Church have no assurance of salvation. That is why the Mass is so important to them. If there's no Mass, then there's no salvation. I had a conversation with a seminarian last week, and we've written about this, and we've got some photographs to put in September's newsletter. And I said to this young man, he's about 25, he's younger than I am, but I said to this young man that you can't go to heaven without a priest. And I went back and forward, back and forward, and back and forward, back and forward with him, and I said you cannot get to heaven without the Mass. And eventually he had to capitulate and accept that. It is an absolute fact. There is no salvation in the Catholic Church. And I just want to say one final thing. If you are able to go along to any of these papal events, and especially if you are a former Catholic, please go along and give the gospel to anybody who will listen to you. You won't get to see the Pope. I mean, you might physically see him, but you won't get to speak to him, and even if you did, he won't entertain you. He's indoctrinated and lost in organised religion. But if you're able to go along and talk to those people who are lying in the streets, please do so. We didn't know the gospel until we were saved, and if you are a former Catholic, then I would say you are duty bound to do so. It's one thing for people who have never been in Catholicism to go and preach the gospel, and we salute them if they're doing that. But if you are a former Catholic, then you know exactly what this is all about. So take some time out to go and do this. And I'll just close with a quick story. Early 1970s, a lady that we know wanted to go along to an Anglican service. She was Catholic, and a friend of hers was Anglican. She had to get permission from her priest to go along to the service, and the priest said to her, whatever you do, don't sing the hymns. 30 years later, or 40 years nearly, we see the Archbishop of Canterbury lining up to meet the Pope. Now just imagine if her priest had said to her, you can't go along. She wouldn't have gone along, she would have lost a friend, and yet the Catholic priest and the Anglican vicar are playing golf every Monday. It shows the absurdity of organised religion. It shows the absurdity of being in a system and being brainwashed, being indoctrinated. This guy is here for 4 days. We're going to pay half of it, the UK taxpayer that is, and the rest is being picked up by the Catholic Church and some of the many millionaire Catholics that are in the United Kingdom. It's a very depressing time, it's a very sad event, his trip to the UK, and I just plead with any Catholic that has any conscience, that has any level of education, who has any truth or hunger for the truth, to get online, check out the truth about the Catholic Church. We've written a lot of articles, I think over 100 articles in total about the Catholic Church. Read our articles if you want. There's books which have been written about this whole sordid event from the 4th century right up to the present day. 50 million people were murdered by the Catholic Church from the 4th century up to the 19th century. Days gone by, if you didn't agree with them, you were simply put to death. A bit like communist Russia or fascist Germany. Like I said several moments ago, they haven't got the clout that they used to have, but they've got the diplomatic clout. And those anathemas, those curses which the Council of Trent affirmed in the 16th century, around about that time, are still applicable for today. Vatican II upheld the Council of Trent, and there are many problems with Roman Catholicism. They do speak out of both sides of their mouth, And that's why I'm asking you to read the article that I've put in the description box. If you're watching this video on YouTube, and if you're watching this video anywhere else, go onto our website and just look up in the Catholic section, can you reject Christ and still go to heaven? And you'll be shocked what the Catholic Church teach. They put a lot of pressure on their own people to go through the rituals, the Mass, so on and so forth, and yet these good Catholics, they'd have you believe and teach and affirm that Muslims and Jews and Hindus and Sikhs, Masons and Flat Earthers and all the other crowd are going to go to heaven without Jesus Christ. That is blasphemy, that is nonsense. Don't call the Pope Holy Father, we call him the false shepherd. And these members of the press gallery and the people who are going to cover this event in the papers and so on and so forth don't know what they're talking about. They are totally ignorant. And you just wait till the Antichrist arrives. You think this guy, the Vat Pack as they're calling him, you think this guy's got some charisma, some clout, and the impression so far in the press has been that he's been well received. You just wait till the Antichrist arrives, the final Antichrist. They'll be on their knees. The whole world is going to fall on their knees and receive the Antichrist. The Muslims are going to receive him, the Masons are going to receive him, the Jews are going to receive him. Every organisation on this earth that are not born again, everybody and anybody who's not washed in the blood, is going to be deceived by the Antichrist. And I believe his soon arrival is sooner than we might have feared. So all I'm going to say, I'm going to sign out now and do something for the Lord over these next 4 days.